Paul O'Sullivan, very good to be with you on, well, quite a momentous day. We've been talking over the past couple of weeks about the Arthur Fraser part in the Phala Phala saga. But yesterday, it appeared as though Cyril Ramaphosa would, in fact, be, or could, in fact, be stepping down. How are you reading the situation at the moment?
I think my late father used to say, believe none of what you hear, half of what you read, and all of what you see. And, the media, a lot of the media activity is based on hearsay. In other words, somebody says, I heard that this and that and that and that. And the next thing, somebody close to the action is saying this. And the next thing, it's all over the media. And we lose 3.6% on the value of the rand. And really, at the end of the day, there was never anything like that going to happen in the first place at all. Who in their right mind would assign South Africa to a president like Mabuza? Who in their right mind would do that? It's unthinkable. If Cyril was going to do anything like resign, he would have plunged the country into chaos. And when I say chaos, I refer to them as the RET faction. They're not really an RET faction. They're a bunch of thieves. They're the people who dress up their crimes under the blanket of RET, the radical economic transformation. And of course, everyone's a capitalist. We know that. The whole world, everybody's a capitalist. The only people who are not capitalists are the people who have nothing. And I remember many, 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 many years ago, I would have been in my late teens or early 20s. And I had a friend, and his sister was a raving socialist. And she was into this, they were living in Dublin, and she was into finding out where houses were sitting empty and breaking open the back of the house and moving in and claiming squatters' rights. And then they were smoking gunja or whatever, weed as they called it, and they have a field day. And I still remember the girl. Her name was Brona. I'm not going to give her surname. If she's still alive today, I don't know, but we're talking 50 years ago or more. And Brona, whenever I met her, she used to accuse me of being a capitalist pig and all the rest of it. And then 20 years later, I bumped into my friend in Dublin, and he said, "Oh, we're going out for supper." And I said, "Okay, that's great. Let's do that." And who was at supper was Brona and her husband. And they arrived in a Porsche. And I said, "Wow, that's a nice car." And then her husband said, "Yeah, after she got married to me, she started making money and she's no longer a communist." So she doesn't need to be a communist anymore because she's making money. And it made me realize then that, of course, everybody in the world wants to improve their lives. That's the first thing. Everybody. There's not a person on the planet that doesn't want to improve their lives. But if the only way to improve your life is to put down or take away from people that have already improved their lives, you're not going to. It's not going to work. That's why the Soviet Union collapsed. It collapsed because if everybody got the same pay for doing the same work, nobody was incentivized to do anything a bit better. And just having their picture on a wall outside the town hall for 6 months of the year wasn't enough to incentivize them. So eventually the Soviet Union collapsed.
But let's get back to the issue at hand here. What we do know is that Arthur Fraser, who you have laid criminal charges against,
Yeah.
has exposed something that happened at Phala Phala, which is now threatening Cyril Ramaphosa's presidency. The Financial Times of London this morning was reporting on it. We have had a report into it by two judges and an attorney who say that he has to answer charges. Given the closeness that you have to this whole saga, how are you reading that part of it? Sure, he's not going to resign irresponsibly, but James Matlatsi told a radio station that Cyril had told him he would resign because of the whole Phala Phala mess. Yet that is, whether it's responsible or not, it's a possibility.
This is a message I sent to somebody who is extremely close, and I know is extremely close to Cyril. And I sent this at 5 o'clock last night when I read this article on News 24. I said the following to him. I said, make sure Cyril knows he will plunge this country into chaos if he resigns. He did nothing wrong and he must stay and captain the ship. Now, there's another saying I don't know if it's in Ireland or I learned it in Ireland, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And whether we like the Cyril or not, the alternative, the possible alternative is mind-blowing. you know, I was tempted to phone my good friend Herman, and him and I have been friends for many, many years. We used to be in business together. And I'm
Herman
tempted, I was
Mashaba.
tempted. Yes. And I saw Herman did a media release yesterday that Cyril must resign immediately. And I was tempted to phone Herman and say, for God's sake, Herman, would you slow down a bit? Just calm down. Let the water settle a bit. Now, there's been no trial. There's been no audi alteram partem principle applied over here. The way evidence is tested, there's only one way to test evidence, and that is to have a trial. That means a person must be given a set of, this is what you're supposed to have done. And by the way, here's my version of events. This is what I'm saying about that. Now, you don't, in the case of, for example, Arthur Fraser, everyone says he exposed the robbery. There was no robbery, first of all. It was couched as a robbery. There was no robbery. There was a house break-in. Somebody got a knife and pulled the putty out and pulled the glass out and climbed in and stole some money and made off. And they only discovered it was stolen, to my knowledge, and I haven't investigated it, even though Arthur Fraser says I did, which is a lie. To my knowledge, they prized the putty out, they stole some money, and they made off. Now, the presidential, protection unit is headed up by a major general in the police. Now, Cyril wasn't in the country. I believe he was in Addis Ababa at the time. In fact, I know he was there. So you've got this theft that takes place. Somebody at the farm finds out about it. They tell the police, a major general in the police, Nakal, and the major general in the police then takes it upon himself to deal with the matter. Now, nobody asked the question, Arthur Fraser can accuse Cyril of not opening a docket. Hang on a minute. He's got a major general in the police who takes over the... Cyril didn't go around at night looking for the people that stole the money. He's running the country. So this major general in the police, he's the guy that thought he would make himself famous. But the problem is nobody knew anything about this major general in the police. Or the people that did, they kept quiet. I knew a lot about him because he was on my radar screen back in 2006 and 2007 when he was arrested for corruption, for getting his chommies to bring a security contract to the National Prosecuting Authority. He was working at the NPA. He was the chairman of the bid committee that decided to appoint his chommy as the head of security for the NPA and make millions of rand in the process. And then he was arrested and charged together with others, people like Joubert. Now, all those cases against him, the criminal charges, fizzled out and vanished. And they vanished during a time when the National Prosecuting Authority was being run by a woman called Jiba. And her right-hand man was a guy called Lawrence Mwebi. It's the same Lawrence Mwebi who was charged and suspended for phoning the investigating officer on the case against Walter Ruter and Joubert and telling the investigating officer not to execute a search warrant. So the whole thing is very, very messy. And here you have, now, turn the clock forward 10 years, and Arthur Fraser leaves the National Prosecuting Authority. The cases against him were all dropped miraculously, despite the fact that there was a prima facie case of corruption against Walter Ruter. And him and Arthur Fraser become chummies. And why wouldn't they? Because Arthur Fraser was chummies with Zuma and that whole cabal. The same cabal that got Walter Ruter off the hook for corruption in the first place.
And this Walter Ruter, that's the Major General in the police that you referred to right in the beginning.
And now somebody must explain how this man suddenly popped up as a Major General in the police. How on earth does a person who's arrested for serious corruption suddenly surface as a Major General in the police? And not only a Major General in the police, but the head of the Presidential Protection Unit. That, well, I've heard of dropping your toast and landing marmalade side up, but this is completely different. This, in my opinion, it was designed, he was a sleeper. Arthur Fraser wanted Walter Ruter to get close to the president. Why? Because Arthur Fraser wants to overthrow the president. Why? Because with the current president in place, Arthur Fraser has a really good chance of spending quite a few years in prison. If he's got a flexible president in place, somebody can appoint a new National Director of Public Prosecutions, and then the NDPP can do to Arthur Fraser what the then NDPP or acting NDPP did to Walter Ruter, which is to make the case vanish. And I'm absolutely certain that Arthur Fraser knows that if he doesn't get lucky with a new president or a new ANC-led bunch of thieves, he knows that he's going to go to prison. And that's why he made a really big mistake, because when he decided to pick on me by falsely implicating me in something I knew nothing about, by accusing me of helping Walter Ruter to track down these people and kidnap them and torture them and all the rest of it, I decided, what the hell, you know what? I'm coming for you, pal. And that's what I've done. So I've now opened another charge against him, because I opened the first docket on the 18th of November, which was a Friday. And I got the docket registered. I sent it to the head of the Hawks, the DPCI, and it was registered at Rosebank Police Station. It's already been collected and it's being worked by the DPCI. And then on the Monday, God is good. On the Monday, the Supreme Court of Appeal issued a judgment in the matter of the appeal by the Commissioner of Correctional Services and the erstwhile corrupt president of this country against the DA, the AfriForum, and a whole lot of other entities concerning the unlawful release from prison of Jacob Zuma. And that judgment, I got it on Monday last week. I read through it and I thought, no, this is not good. So I sent an email to General Labia, and I copied the email to the NDPP, the current NDPP, who is not anything like what we had in the past. And I also sent it to the ID, Andrea Johnson, and these are all good people. And I sent it to DPCI, Godfrey Labia. And then I got a call. I can't remember if it was Friday or Monday. I lose track of time. I'm working 7 days a week at the moment. I got a call and they said, no, they want a sworn statement from me in connection with this other allegation I'm making, which is that Arthur Fraser committed a criminal offence in releasing Jacob Zuma from prison. And the offence he committed was intended to ingratiate himself, not just with Jacob Zuma, but this whole RET faction. He's the hero in their eyes. You know, they can come and burn down shopping malls and kill 300 people, but people like Zuma and Arthur Fraser, they are heroes. And I decided this guy must face the music. So we posted it on our website, I think, yesterday. But we've opened another docket. It's already been handed over. It was hand-delivered to the brigadier that's investigating the matter. And I'm told it's gaining traction. So maybe it will just be a fact that Arthur Fraser will be charged, I'm hoping, with defeating the ends of justice in releasing unlawfully and intentionally releasing Jacob Zuma from prison, knowing that he had no right to release him.
Paul, this is all stuff that is fascinating to us as South Africans, but the international community is looking at South Africa's president and asking, is this man going to be ejected from office? And the consequences of that, as you've outlined, would be chaotic. Bottom line it for us. Is Ramaphosa, in your opinion, going to be stepping off the stage?
Well, I hope not. I think if he does, we're going to have problems. I've certainly made my case clear to him that he should not, and that it would be like a captain jumping off a ship that's heading towards an iceberg. And it's unacceptable conduct. You don't become the president of a country when the weather is good, and when the storm comes along, you throw the towel in and go the other way. You take on the presidency of a country not for the money. As John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And I have no doubt the man that I know as Cyril Ramaphosa did not become president of South Africa because he wants the country to do something for him. He became president of this country because he wants to do something for this country. And he started off by getting rid of some of the rubbish that we have. There's a lot more rubbish to go. And maybe in the near future, we're going to see him stepping up and saying, right, enough's enough now. I'm not taking any more of this nonsense from people like Arthur Fraser with their fake hearsay cases. Nothing in that docket of Fraser is worth investigating. It's absolute rubbish. And in my opinion, and as I say, I have not investigated it, so I'm not giving a not guilty verdict. But in my opinion, I've seen no evidence of any crime that's been committed by Cyril Ramaphosa. I've seen plenty of evidence of crimes that have been committed by Walter Ruter and by Arthur Fraser. And those are the crimes that I now want to see prosecuted.
So if I understand correctly, the way that you're reading this is that Walter Ruter, this major general in the police, who in your opinion is corrupt, was placed as the head of the presidential VIP protection unit to get close to Ramaphosa so that he could achieve what he's just achieved now by pulling a real nasty on him and actually implicating him in something, justifiably or not, that could bring down the presidency.
He didn't do it on his own, did he? He worked with Arthur Fraser. Arthur Fraser cannot explain where he got the video from that he handed to his chosen journalists. We know where he got the video from. He got it from Walter Ruter. Now, what was Walter Ruter thinking giving a video of a housebreaking to someone like Arthur Fraser, who at all material times we know has been facing possible criminal charges. When I say he's corrupt, I'm not saying he's been convicted. I'm saying he needs to be put on trial. We can't be judge, jury, and executioner. The weight of evidence against him at the Sondo Commission is mind-blowing. This, you just look on our website. We've got a picture of Jacob Zuma and what's his name, Mahlobo, with the two Chinese masseuses. And I think our story is called "The Show Ain't Over Till the Fat Lady Sings." And that explains in some detail how the then Minister of Intelligence, and while he was Minister of Intelligence, Arthur Fraser was running this principal agent network. So the two of them were working hand in glove. And while all that was going on, hundreds of millions of rand have gone missing out of the system. And it's been used to recruit and hire parallel spy networks who've been spying on South Africans. And it's all there. The evidence is there.
Paul, just to close off with, if I understand correctly, Cyril Ramaphosa has been set up by Arthur Fraser and his sleeper, Major General Ruter. And your advice to him is don't fall for it. You've been set up. The public will know. The truth will come out. Don't resign.
Well, I'm saying resign if you believe you're guilty. If you believe you're not guilty, stay put, captain the ship. Let's weather this storm. Let's get past all this nonsense and see where we get. The criminals need to go to prison. And you can't send the criminals to prison if you're going to plead guilty by an act of walking away from your responsibility. You have a responsibility to run this country, and you are shirking that responsibility. If you commit an act, it's like what do they call it? An admission of guilt act. If you resign and walk away, it means you're admitting guilt. And I don't believe you've committed any criminal offense. I've not seen the evidence. If I've seen evidence that Cyril Ramaphosa has committed a criminal offense, I would step up to the plate immediately and demand this resignation. I've seen no evidence. That pathetic document put together by Arthur Fraser and the second document he put together amounts to nothing more than hearsay and conjecture and false, fraudulent evidence. And Arthur Fraser is the one that should be investigated and charged.
Paul O'Sullivan from Forensics for Justice. I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.